everyone, and recommend to everyone at less than $20 a piece. And that's what we're going to be talking about. These 3 knives, all of which are under $20, and I think you definitely want to consider. Now, full disclosure, before we open these, I have already played with them and put them back in the box for dramatic effect. So we're going to go ahead and pull them out one at a time, and we're going to be talking about them as we go. So the first knife to talk about is this one, and it's probably my favorite of the whole lot. It's also the smallest knife. This, and let me make sure I get the number right, is the F753M, and the M is important, and I'll show you why in a minute. All of the knives here have similar features. They all have a easy to use crossbar lock. They all have completely ambidextrous setups that includes the ability to apply the pocket clip to both sides. They all use 440C, which is an excellent budget steel. They all have good heat treatments, and that's something that's been tested independently from myself. So I've done a lot of research on this. They consistently do a good heat treatment on their knives. So with that, all of these knives are also under $20, and this might be my favorite one of the lot. So we have a very nice compact package with a blade length of just, and I mean just under 3 inches total. And it's fantastic, to say the least. This is a very familiar blade shape. It's not something that is out of the ordinary. I can think of a lot of different knives, such as the Feldspar from CJRB, and so on, that just look like this knife. But I gotta say, having the crossbar lock is absolutely essential, because it's the kind of lock that builds confidence in a new user, somebody who is trying a knife, a folding knife, for the first time, maybe graduating from something that was given to them. They want to purchase their own. They want to understand what's going on in the knife community. I think more than any knife that you're going to see, and maybe any knife period, this will probably fit the bill. Now, I've been playing with this knife, this particular one, quite a bit, and it's very sharp. And I've been using it just a little bit to play around, but here. Get the idea? Very, very sharp. And that's great. Out of the box, a lot of times, especially when it's an inexpensive knife, and even sometimes when it's not, you don't get a sharp knife. So you won't need to necessarily learn how to sharpen, but it is recommended that you practice with an inexpensive knife. And this has all the right features, at least for me. Something of note, though, that is kind of interesting with these is that they have washers, not bearings, meaning that they're not going to be quite as fidgety. It's not going to be quite as easy to manipulate them as some other knives might be. But they're really good if you're going to use your knife. If you're really going to get them dirty, you're going to get nasty stuff inside the pivots. They are much more forgiving to use bearings than to use, to use washers than to use bearings. And see, the washers are actually quite appreciated for a knife like this, and I find it to be still pretty easy to manipulate, and it seems to only be getting better as I go. So really great. Yes, you can flick it open, although it's not as easy as if I'm trying to keep it in frame. This is a great knife, and it's $20, as I said. So really, really nice and sharp. Comes to a great point, not too thin at the point, a flat grind. And actually, you know, I say that, but it feels almost like it could be hollow. But it does come to a nice sharp point with pretty thin blade steel behind the edge. What I find particularly impressive is how even the grind is. A lot of times in cheap knives, the thickness behind the edge of the blade is inconsistent. So what happens when they sharpen it is that this edge, you can see the thickness here, it's different along its length, but not in this case. Like I said, I've had much more expensive knives that have significant problems with exactly that. All right, let's move on to 2 other knives. You see, we'll go to the big boy last. The next one, and this is where the M is so important, is just the big brother of the exact same knife. And there are a couple of differences, but it is basically the exact same knife, but is with a 3.5-inch blade. It has the same reversible clips. By the way, these 3-point connections that you see here means that it can use a whole variety of different clips from Benchmade, I believe some Spyderco and others. So if you don't like this clip, you can switch them out, which is great. This is a significantly bigger blade, 3.5 inches. It's also going to be thicker as well. So a good combination of choices for you to make. 3.49 inches on the blade length here and 2.9 on there. So you can kind of play with the different sizes. Now this one I just got it yesterday, so I haven't done too much with it. Actually, I haven't really cut anything. So let's take a look at the sharpness. That's pretty amazing. It's not the sharpest knife I've ever seen. I think that goes to the Hogue out of the box. But still very, very good. So, not bad. I actually will say that it's not as sharp as the 3-inch variety. It just doesn't feel quite as... It could be just the thickness of the steel, honestly. And it might be a little thicker behind the edge. And it does definitely feel like that on this knife. So this is going to take a little bit more, I think, a little bit more beating, and it's going to be a little bit tougher just from the thickness alone. Once again, looking at the actual cutting edge, seems to be a little bit of difference here, just a smidgen. Oh, maybe not. Real nice, even grind. So good job on that. Ganzo is doing a very good job. And all of these knives are going to be great to sharpen because notice that they end, and then there's plenty of space to sharpen the blade. There's nothing stopping you. There's no weird choil that's not cut properly. It doesn't dead end to a piece of steel. So these are going to be really great to sharpen and sharpen evenly. Another great feature. Now, also I noticed that there's a slightly different pivot going on here. Just some different color for the what do you call it? Yeah, the knife pivot. And other than that, it's pretty similar. All of these have G10 scales. I'm having trouble today. G10 scales, G10 backspacer, and interestingly, all of them have hollowed out liners. It's hard to see, but they actually have holes drilled for weight savings. Which is like, these are a lot of added features that feel like they should be in much more premium knives. But the Ganzo Firebirds, man, they're really giving you a lot of value in this case. This is also a little bit easier to manipulate because of just the weight of the blade alone. Still, great for both left-handers and right-handers. You're going to be able to manipulate it without any issues, although I'm not out of practice on my left hand. So I hope you will forgive me for that. See if I can do it. There we go. Boom. So left hand, right hand capable, no problem. I actually think that I like this one in my hand a little bit better. And if that's not big enough for you, I got one more. One more that I think you might want to consider. Now this one is quite a bit bigger than the last one. But also another generic, relatively generic design. And funny enough, it is also the cheapest knife on the table. So this, I think, came just under 20 at like 19 something. I think this one was a little bit cheaper than that for some reason, maybe just from demand alone. And this was by far the cheapest knife at around $18. And this is a beautiful knife. Really is. It came centered. It has this really thick, full flat grind, 440C. Look at that thing. And here's the crazy thing. If you have big hands, this is your knife. This is a great knife for big hands or gloved hands. I think this would be a fantastic working knife. Look at how thick this drop point blade is at the tip. That's substantial. And it's a pretty substantial blade thickness as well. It may be the same. No, it's actually thicker. It definitely is. I'm not going to measure it right now, but it's definitely thicker than the 3.5-inch version of this knife. I'm going to put all the information in the pinned comment as well as the description, so no need to try to write all this down. I'll link not only these three knives, but a couple others from Ganzo that you might want to also consider, all under $20. This is insane what you're getting here. 440C, in many ways, is better than the 9CR18 MOV that you see in some mid-range knives like the... Anyway, it's just really, really good. What you're getting here is some of the highest value that I could possibly find, in addition to being completely ambidextrous. And yeah, a great starting point for pretty much anyone who wants to understand the knife world. And the crossbar lock, without question, is the lock that I would recommend to absolutely everyone without any exception. It's strong. It's completely ambidextrous. It's got a really good learning curve. Like, you can start off with any of these knives not knowing much and being able to open it two-handed and then simply pulling back the lock and allowing it to fall without ever putting your fingers in front of the blade. And I think this is really something to consider when you're maybe even giving these as presents. And can you imagine a better stocking stuffer than maybe something like this? An excellent little knife that maybe introduces someone to a crossbar lock. I mean, this is a great stepping stone to a variety of much more premium products, right? The Hogue Deca and the Benchmade Bug Out and all that stuff. Like, this is a great gateway to all of those things. And the nice part is it will develop a certain, well, let me put it this way. You're not going to be easily go back to junky knives once you handle these. I really believe that, because in so many ways they are matching what I see in knives that are in the $50, $60, even $70 range. They really, really are. I mean, there's even some designs happening on the pivot for this one knife, which is crazy. Just really, really well done. Not much more to say. You got $20 lying around, and you need a